Welcome to the episode of Reading Between the Wines. I am your host, Winnona Glass, and I am here with my esteemed colleague, the Psalm of the South, Keagen Moore.
Hello, y'all.
This podcast, we are going to talk about The Book of Polly by Kathy Heppenstall. If you've not read this book, it's a phenomenal book. Oh my goodness. There's so many things about this book that I really, really loved. I mean, everybody needs a mom like Polly, don't you think?
Really takes me back to the deep south.
Did your mom ever go into school with a hawk on her shoulder just to cover for you?
Never have I ever had my mom walk in with a hawk for sure, but you know.
I mean, that's how the story opens, is she talks about how her mom walks into the school with a hawk on her shoulder to totally validate a lie that she told. So yeah, that was just the epitome. Now, Polly had her faults, we're not going to lie. She was not always the best mom.
Well, we all have our faults.
Well, that's true. None of us can be a great mom all of the time. #quarantine. But she struggled with her relationship with her older son, and he had his own demons that he fought with. But kind of as a family unit, I kind of envied them, they had a lot of fun. They did some crazy stuff. Polly was really kind of that mom that was sure, you want to build a raft and float down the Mississippi? Cool, let's try it.
Totally sounds safe,
Yeah.
But they were close knit. They were connected,
They were.
Knew everything going on in their lives,
So she calls her husband the captain, which is a unique way to refer to your husband. And also they talk about it as the dad's name is the captain. I know that terms of endearment are a thing in the South. I get that because our author, Kathy Heppenstall, grew up in Odessa, Texas, and spent most of her life right near the Louisiana border. And a lot of this book takes place kind of in that area of the South. But, I just am... Were they normal? I mean, what's normal these days? But as a family unit, that the dad dies and leaves the mom with there's a huge gap in ages with the kids, and so and they have this boat that lives in the driveway. That sounds totally normal in my life.
100%. You could roll up in South Carolina and see such a family.
Are you from South Carolina?
I am.
What part of South Carolina are you from?
I will politely say it's the burbs of Charleston. I'm a little inland.
Okay.
Not too inland to have an accent, but nevertheless, considered part of the deep South. But
okay.
I think Polly was a good mother.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, she worked hard.
Yes.
Even if it was whatever at the pharmacy, but she still put in her time and tried to connect with her daughter and, be a single mother.
Yes. And so what do you think? So Willow is her daughter's name. Then this whole story is told from Willow's perspective, which seems to be a theme lately in books that are told from the child's perspective.
Definitely.
Yes. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but we can talk about that later. So Willow, is a coming of age story with her. And so she has a friend who's her best friend who happens to be a boy, and they kind of grow up together, and eventually explore things beyond friendship. When they become,
I don't know what you're talking about there.
Well, And so there's something about those relationships, that first love that, kind of makes you tied to that person.
Yeah, for better or worse, you will remember.
Yes. So what is it about that first love that you think makes it so memorable? For good or bad?
I don't know, but it's definitely, something I remember.
Tell me more about your first. Oh man,
let's get juicy here.
Of course.
But I also had...
You don't have to name names, but, people pay extra for that.
A best friend that was a male.
Oh, yes.
That was my neighbor.
Well, look at you. There's a lot of parallels
and
here.
And we never, went where they went in the book. But nevertheless... we shared some fond memories of, growing up together, exploring, how our bodies are changing, and, that's different. But...
Do you still speak to that friend today?
No, but I have seen him once in his adult life, and he showed up on our parents' doorstep. My parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. Post Hurricane Hugo, for those that know, 1989. Same property, different house. But yeah.
What did he show up for? Inquiring minds.
Inquiring about me, I suppose. I had moved away from the South at that point, but
he must have been reminiscing about that relationship as well.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna call him out here, but I'm sure he's living a happy, successful life now. So
well, good. So what do you think? Did you ever get involved with any of your like high school sweethearts? We talked about your childhood, but did you get involved with any of your high school sweethearts? Or?
I did not. However, my best friend fell in love with her high school sweetheart.
Really?
And looking back, I would like to think I can claim some of that love because I was kind of pushing her toward him as like, go for it, give him your number, like go sit by him on the bus. We were all in band, full disclosure, yay marching band. But they are happily married and they have two beautiful sons, and
lovely.
I genuinely think they love each other and they have an awesome relationship and they have not known any other love other than their own.
Well, that's so sweet and very rare these days.
I don't know how common that is, but it definitely
that
does
seems
happen.
Very uncommon to marry your high school sweetheart these days.
They're adorable.
Well, that's good for them. Good for them. So back to Polly. And there's kind of a pivotal point in the book where the brother gets banned from the house. And he kind of spirals downward. And Willow takes it upon herself to try to salvage that relationship. And she finds out that the girl at school, that she's like the mean girl at school, decides that she's going to Tulum, which is where her brother had been before. So she totally like fakes the postcard and has her friend send it from, not her friend, has the mean girl send it from Tulum so that her mom will think that her brother is fine.
Oh, Willow is great at lying, right? I mean, at least she's been working on her progress throughout the book, right? So,
well, and that's kind of one of the things that they talked about that I've read in another book. It talked about how the kids of parents who are less than normal, we'll say, more unique, a lot of times, especially with alcoholic parents, that the kids are actually the better liars because you don't ever want to tell a lie that someone's going to question or someone's going to investigate further.
Yeah, got to get smart about it.
Exactly, because they were saying that, like, you never say that the dog ate your homework, you say you forgot your backpack, because no one questions that. It's just things like that you tell lies that are feasible for kids and totally make it about yourself. And that's one of the things that I thought was interesting is that Willow does become a really great liar in all of this. And I don't know if that's going to serve her well in the future. It might make her a great politician.
She was on a mission, like whatever it took to find out the information she wanted to know. So,
but her brother had a best friend who was very protective of the family. And when the brother left, he kind of stepped in, still in that, not really like a creepy neighbor role, but he was very protective, but from afar. And I think he really proved that whenever they went down the river. And,
when they went to the beach.
Yes, that
kind of creeped me out a little bit, not gonna lie. Like,
yes.
I couldn't imagine being her age.
Right, and being
out in the
propositioned.
ocean, being messed with.
Right.
But the ocean and,
But he really stepped up.
He's a good old boy in a good way,
He was. He's a very protective older brother who wasn't her brother. And we've all benefited from those relationships in our life. I certainly know that I have. Those men who really step up in our lives to be that protective person when there's no one else to protect us. And I'm grateful for them, quite honestly. And he really... The book, the way that it was written, you really weren't sure which way it was going to go with him because you weren't sure if he was going to step in and then like try to be the dad or to be the boyfriend or
the older brother.
Like there were a lot of roles that he was kind of teetering on the edge with, and it wasn't really clear. So I was very...
Or the lover of her mother.
Right. Yes.
And I got weird in there for a little bit.
Yes, there was a few things in there that I was like, oh, where is this going? But I feel like that it came back around, and I really loved the role that he ended up playing and how he was that protector, and that... Okay, I was totally freaked out by the whole like deliverance scene with the guys in the river, and I could see how that could go really south really quickly.
Exactly.
And I was getting a little nervous, but he came through. He totally came through, but not in an overtly like, I'm here to make sure that your passage is safe. It was I got your back, but you're never even going to know I'm here.
Yeah, it's not like I'm following you in my own boat, but I was like stealthily on the side.
Right.
Still with my eyes on you.
So he let them have their adventure. He let them really kind of explore their relationship. And I feel like they got really close on that trip. That trip was kind of a defining point in their relationship.
For sure.
But I did love the role that he played in that, and that he became that protective brother. Now, how do you feel about reconnecting with a lost love? I mean, like, it was clear that Polly was meant to be with him at the end. And I'm being a little vague because I want you to read the book. So it was really clear that that they should have been together in the end. But at the same time, there's still a lot of open-ended questions there about what happens next.
Definitely not a finish everything up nicely with a bow on top kind of book.
I would agree with that.
But yeah, it leaves a lot to question and ponder of, you know, what would have happened if circumstances would have been different.
Right. But they're holding hands in the front yard in a chair. Like, that's a kind of promising...
It's a start. Ending. It's a start.
So Polly gets the bear, and they talk about the bear.
The bear.
Now, you're obviously from the South. Is it customary for people to just not call it cancer, to name it in some sort of innocuous way?
I would say yes and no. Like, for sure... We've had cancer in my family. It's a common thing. But it's also, to name it is to, like, not fully acknowledge it.
Right.
Like, it's not completely taking over our life, our family, this scenario, this day. But as far as the South goes, we really like naming inanimate objects, you know?
That is so true. We name everything in our family.
Exactly.
All my cars have names.
Yes. And boats.
Yes,
know,
our
being on the
boat's
coast, you're not going to call it the boat. You're going to call it like my Daisy or whatever fun family name you have.
My 401k, because
your 401k has a name
because I used all of my 401k to buy my
drain
boat.
the 401k for the boat. Got it.
I don't know that is a wise investment because I don't think boats appreciate and value all that well.
Well, they're like cars.
It's fun for now.
Yeah.
Which a 401k is not that fun right now, but the boat definitely is.
Definitely less risky, question mark.
That remains to be seen. Because it could be like the 1970 Chris Craft. That's always going to be back in style. But I made that up.
Fond memories of pontoon boats, though.
Oh, yes. Did yours have the slide that goes down?
Definitely not.
Really?
More basic version.
Yeah.
But, family times.
So
what about you? Can we tie this back in? Like, did you have a childhood love? Or a guy that you're reminiscing on today, hoping shows back up in your life?
I wouldn't go that far, but I do have a fond memory. I think his name was Chris. We're going to go. I mean,
That's a basic name. We can call him out.
That was very memorable. I think his name was Chris. But I do remember he was our neighbor at my dad's house. And it was he was one of my first boyfriends that I had for a longer than a semester, maybe, young love. I
had to throw at least summer love in there for a little bit.
Yes. The only memorable childhood romance that I had was in grammar school, and I think we were second, third grade. I don't know. I was at a very Christian school, and we were friends, kind of reminiscent of this. We were very good friends. And one day, and this is very traumatic for me, one day he wanted me to play Star Wars with him.
Ooh.
Yes, he wanted me to be Princess Leia.
Of course.
And I didn't want to play that day. I don't know, maybe I wanted to play soccer or football because I was that kind of kid. And so he asked Jennifer to play, and then he and I never played together again after that.
Burn. But it's burned in your memory.
It is
Like,
definitely burned in my memory. So if any guy asked me to play Princess Leia now, I think that's like a defining point in our relationship.
You're like, excuse me? What did you just say to me? I am not okay. I am not going to put my hair in buns right now and do anything for you.
I know. I think I was in like first grade, so I didn't even know what he wanted. I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate mail for this one, but I have never seen any of the Star Wars movies. Yes, maybe it's because
hate mail from my family.
Maybe it's because of Jason. Maybe it's Jason's fault that I never ventured into that, because like the poor kid has traumatized me forever. Here we are, a few
Just a couple
years past that, and I still am not okay with it. So
you should be, though. Princess Leia's a warrior.
Well, she is
Jedi.
She is, but you should be able to not want to play that for a day and not cost you your childhood relationship.
Definitely.
So I just feel like I was unfairly judged.
So a lot of kids in my neighborhood that were my age were mostly boys. So I was playing in the ditch, looking at the frogs on the bikes.
Yes.
More than I was doing whatever girls do. I don't know, having doll houses and...
I did not do that at all.
What's the fake oven thing?
Oh, the Easy Bake oven.
I did have one, but I don't know how
I had one when I was
utilized.
25, because my family is you need to learn how to cook. So here's an Easy Bake oven.
It might have been passed down through a different cousin to me, but I had one. I just don't remember using it that much.
Gotcha. Well, as we're going to go back to the boat, we talked a lot about boats today. There was a very pivotal point in the book where the boat catches on fire. And it is kind of changes the whole trajectory of this story because of the boat and the fire. So making our leap, Keagen, our Psalm of the South. So wine is definitely affected by fire as well.
Definitely.
So how are these fires that are happening out in California going to affect the future vintages?
First of all, our hearts go out to everybody in California dealing with the smoke, how horrible that is, to all the people trying to make wine and all that. So first, California is about 80% or more of all the wine made in the United States.
Yikes.
And about 90% of wine that's exported from America is all from California. So California is very important to us. And then there's been fires. We can get political or we can leave it there. But fires have been a very serious deal in California, especially since 2017. There's been 7 of the 10 biggest fires since 1950 have been since 2015.
Holy cow.
So this year, or 2020, I should say. So in 2020, the Glass Fire was the big fire, over 67,000 acres. Started in the end of September of 2020.
So is that mostly in the wine region? Because California's kind of a big state and I get confused easily in geography.
Yes. So it did actually, the Glass Fire started Howell Mountain. It was probably the AVA, American Viticultural Area, most affected by the Glass Fire. But in 2020, 4 million acres.
Holy cow.
Have burned so far from the fires. At least 30 wineries were affected. Very tragic. So let's get a little sciencey here. We're going to talk about smoke taint.
Well, hang on. Before we get into that, why don't you tell everyone what we're drinking right now? Because I feel if we're going to talk about smoke taint, we definitely need
some
to
wine
have
in the
some
glass.
Wine. Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
So we are drinking a 2018 vintage from Fourth. They have a Cabernet Sauvignon called All Boys.
Which goes back with our book, talking about how, we were even kind of tomboyish growing up.
B is for boys.
Yes,
They call it bright. They call it bold, brilliant, and beautiful. And they also have an all-girls wine, which is their rosé. So this is great. If you can support any California wineries, especially in Napa Valley, Sonoma, they have been the most affected by these fires. It's, like I said, it's very tragic. Some estimates are that 80 to 90% of the 2020 year of grapes will be lost. Now, they'll either just literally dump that juice back into the earth.
That hurts.
The cheapest wines you see in large packaging might end up with some of these grapes. Now, that being said, there is some technical ways to get rid of the smoke taint in the wine, and that involves using charcoal. So it is successful in taking out the smoke taint, but the bad side of that is it also strips a lot of the other amazing aromas and other flavors you get from the wine. So it's kind of just a more basic, simple wine that you end up with.
So you're thinking that the vineyards that are able to produce, that did have enough grapes to actually harvest, because this happened right around harvest, correct?
Sadly, there were multiple fires in 2020. So grapes are most susceptible to smoke taint between veraison, which is when the grapes change color, all the way up until harvest when you actually pick the grapes off the vine. And so essentially fires started around veraison all the way up through harvest.
So there's a lot of wines, a lot of vineyards that aren't even just going to have grapes to be able to produce wine. Is that fair?
Exactly. And so some vintners are paying the farmers to pick the grapes no matter what, to keep their relationships. And other ones are paying them to leave them on the vines. Poor, sad vines. Sometimes it takes like 3 to 5 years for the vines to fully recover from smoke taint.
Really?
So when we're talking smoke taint, we're not talking like, oh, this wine has aromas of smokiness, like a sexy Northern Rhone Syrah. This
I
is
think
like,
you should say that again. I feel like that was a very sexy
this isn't like, we're not talking Hermitage here, okay? This is, like in the Book of Holly, smoke taint, you're going to smell ashtray. You're going to taste ashtray. Not pleasant. Even if you're a smoker, you don't want to lick the bottom of your mama's ashtray.
I don't
Not
really,
a pleasant feeling.
I'm not great at wine, but I feel like if I paid $30 for a bottle of wine and it tasted like an ashtray, I would be
sadly disappointed.
Pretty unhappy with that.
So it's very tricky. A lot of sciencey things going on. People are studying it. So Chile and Australia have also had serious major fires, and they've been researching this as well. But essentially, it's difficult to predict. So how close is the fire? Where was the wind blowing that day? How long did it linger in the region? It's very tricky to try to predict. So some wineries are sending their grapes off for testing, obviously, because it's so widespread that the tests are being backed up, takes longer. So a lot of times you don't know whether or not your wine has been affected. So you continue to pick the grapes, you continue to process them. And so sometimes you can tell when the wine starts fermenting, that you kind of pick up on these smells.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask is, like, at what point in the winemaking process would the smoke taint reveal itself if it was going to?
So sometimes you can tell in the fermentation. Sometimes, sadly, you can't tell until the wine is in your mouth. Some of these, we'll call them volatile phenols. I know I'm getting a little technical here. But these are compounds.
I feel like that's a femme fatale, though. Like, I just see, I don't know, like Natalie Portman in all black right now with some sort of machete.
So we're talking volatile phenols. These are compounds that permeate the grapes and bond with the sugar inside of the grapes. But like I was saying, sometimes you can't tell until these enzymes break down in your mouth.
Really?
So sometimes you don't pick it up in the fermentation. You put it in the bottle or the box, and you don't really tell for sure that your wine is affected by smoke taint until it's in your mouth.
And so even when they're aging it in the barrel, because I know that vintners will often go in and do tastings, because bourbon, I grew up in bourbon country, and bourbon people, they do
Kentucky,
that.
baby.
That's right. So they will go through and they will test and taste, and they can smell the smokiness and all that. But that smokiness is supposed to be there because they're charred barrels.
Right.
So the vintners can't even tell as they're tasting and aging.
Like I said, sometimes you can when it's fermenting.
Sure.
But not always.
Interesting.
And there's different thresholds, and there's, it might be more effective to this grape as opposed to that grape. I will say, because of how wines are made, red wines tend to be more affected because of the maceration with the skin contact. So this is like smoke literally touching the outside of the grapes, which is the skin. And that's where all the crazy scientific interactions happen. So your white wine is less likely to be affected as opposed to your red wines.
So as a general rule, if it has a 2020 vintage on it, you're safer in the whites than you are in the reds. It's at least less unpredictable.
Definitely, but you could even take all the way that back to 2015. Okay. So a lot of people were comparing the severity of the fires in 2020 to 2017.
Okay.
So maybe 2017, 2020. That being said, nicer producers such as Fourth and other well-known producers, if they have any question, they're not going to make the wine. They're going to make it a second or third label. They're going to sell it to bulk wine. They're going to dump it into the earth and let planet Earth drink up all the juice. So better safe than sorry.
If you pour the fermented wine back into Mother Earth, is it better for, does it help the vines recover faster, or?
That's a very scientific question.
It is a very scientific
that
question.
I'm not sure of. I just know that, if you're actually damaging vines, it can take several years just for them to be fully reproductive again.
Sure.
So they might be putting out some stuff, but
I wasn't sure if that was like stem cells for grapes. Here, take some of this damaged stuff, we'll put it back on you and you'll be better.
It's the natural line of things, giving back to earth. But
so I have a very technical question here. So if they're paying the farmers to leave the grapes on the vine, do they just become raisins at that point?
Yes. Maybe we're foreshadowing to some point in the future where we talk about late harvest wines or ice vines, as the Germans call them.
The ice vines.
But or Valpolicella in Italy, literally like raisinated grapes. They pick them and dry them. They bring them inside and let them dry into raisins.
Okay. Fantastic. So perhaps we are foreshadowing to some future books here. Well, this has been a very, very educational conversation with us about wine and the smoke part of it, but I don't feel like we gave forth a very good representation of what we're actually drinking today.
It's time to drink.
Yes, it is always time to drink.
Yes. So this is a Cabernet Sauvignon. As most of us know, it is higher in alcohol than most other grapes, especially in the Napa and Sonoma Valleys in California. They have no problem in most circumstances getting to ripeness. So this is a wife and husband operation, Jan and Gary Forth. Their first vintage was 1998. They are practicing organic. And this particular wine is sourced from 4 vineyards, all aged separately. But, there's a high diurnal shift, which essentially means it's warmer during the day and cooler at night.
Okay.
California is obviously a large region.
Yes.
So a lot of variation. You have a lot of factors such as the ocean and the mountains and where the fog lands and how long it lays in during the day. But this particular wine was aged 16 months in French and American oak, only 10% new. So it's not going to be in your face vanilla and toast, but a very nice representation of the grape itself, I believe.
Wonderful. Well, we always like things that represent toast. because we love toast around here. But I'm going to go ahead and segue into our next podcast. So we appreciate that you have listened this far, and we want to talk about our next time. We are going to talk about Pretty Things by Janelle Brown, a wonderful novel that we'll get into more later. And we are going to do a taste test between very inexpensive wines and a very expensive wine. I say taste test. We're doing one taste test because we're a new podcast. So we're having an inexpensive wine, an inexpensive white wine, and an expensive white wine.
Moderately priced.
Moderately priced?
Our budget is not up there. We're not going to try anything that you can't yourself as a listener find in your local liquor store, hopefully.
Perfect. So we're going to talk about the differences because, again, I'm not a white wine person. The redder, the better. So she's going to try and convince me that I can tell the difference between a lower priced white wine and a more moderately priced white wine. So we hope that you'll join us for our next episode of Reading Between the Wines. But until then, you can head on over to readingbetweenthewines.blog, where we'll have a listing of all the wines that we talked about today. We'll also have the book, a link to the book, and you'll be able to see what we're working on for next time and some future podcasts. So until then, we just want to remind you to always keep your glass half full. Cheers.
Cheers.